Nelson Mandela once said that you can't truly understand a nation until you've been inside its jails. But today, we're going beyond borders and back through time. From prisons so horrific they're hard to imagine, to punishments that were literally suspended in the air, say goodbye to the free world as we explore the worst prisons throughout history, spanning from ancient times to the present day. Number 1. Mamertine Prison. With a society built on violence, war, widespread slavery, and brutal punishments, life as a citizen in ancient Rome could be pretty bleak. But have you ever thought about how much worse it was for prison inmates during the Roman Empire? Well, brace yourself, centurion. Known as the carcer in Latin, Mamertine Prison was an ancient maximum security facility dating back to the 7th century BC. Commissioned by Rome's 4th king, Ancus Marcius, between 640 and 616 BC, Mamertine was mostly made up of damp, underground dungeons. The most infamous of these was the Tullianum, located within the city's sewer system. This truly horrific pit could only be accessed through a small manhole in the floor above, where prisoners were dropped in to await their grim fate. With no way out and the exit just out of arm's reach, you can imagine the torment of being trapped there. In Roman law, long-term imprisonment wasn't a common punishment. Prisons were used as temporary holding cells before trials or executions. Still, some famous figures reportedly spent time in this dreadful place, including apostles St. Peter and Paul, who were said to have been held there before their crucifixions. And if waiting in a sewer for execution wasn't bad enough, some prisoners like Jugurtha, the king of Numidia, were left to die in the Tullianum. Mamertine remained in use as a prison until the 4th century AD. Later, in the 17th century, the Church of San Giuseppe dei Falegnami was built over the site. Today, the remnants of Mamertine are open as a museum near the Roman Forum, with tributes to St. Peter and Paul, though it's likely they'd think it's a little too late for that. Number 2. Oubliettes. Medieval prisoners often endured a variety of brutal punishments, but surprisingly, one of the worst involved no violence at all. Known as bottle dungeons, oubliettes were narrow, deep shafts with only one way out, through a trapdoor high above, completely out of reach. The word oubliette comes from the French term oublier, meaning to forget, and that's exactly what would happen. These dark chambers were sometimes built within the walls of castle upper floors, allowing prisoners to hear the world carrying on without them as they were left to be forgotten, slowly meeting their end. If the thought of being trapped alone in an oubliette sounds unbearable, rest assured, it could get worse. Prisoners sometimes shared the cramped space with the decaying remains of those who had come before them, along with rats that feasted on the bodies. A comforting thought, right? Oubliettes have been found in castles across Europe, but one of the most notorious is in Ireland's Leap Castle. Once home to the O'Carroll clan in the 1500s, the oubliette was originally used to hide valuables. However, the clan eventually repurposed it for much darker deeds. When the Darby family took over the castle in 1649, they made a horrifying discovery in the oubliette: wooden spikes at the bottom and the remains of 3 cartloads of former prisoners. Some believe that clearing out the oubliette disturbed the restless spirits of those forgotten souls, who are said to haunt Leap Castle to this day. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the grim reality of the oubliette's past is enough to fuel nightmares on its own. Number 3. Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is one of the most infamous torture devices in history, earning its terrifying reputation as a one-person prison cell lined with deadly spikes. Victims were believed to be forced inside, with the door slamming shut around them, spikes included. Sounds unimaginable, right? Well, that's precisely the point. While the Iron Maiden is often thought to have been a popular punishment in medieval times, modern historians now question whether it ever existed during that period. The earliest reference to it comes over 200 years later, from German philosopher Johann Philipp Siebenkees, who wrote about a coin forger in Nuremberg being executed in 1515 using the Iron Maiden. However, no authentic Iron Maidens from the Middle Ages have been found, raising doubts about Johann's story. Despite this, replicas were constructed and displayed in museums across Europe and the United States, with the Iron Maiden of Nuremberg becoming one of the most famous, even brought to the US by Robert Ripley of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Yet, the story doesn't end there. While the Iron Maiden may have been more legend than fact in medieval times, it took a dark turn in modern history. In 2003, Time magazine reported that a functioning Iron Maiden was discovered in a compound owned by Uday Hussein, the sadistic son of Saddam Hussein. It was allegedly used to punish those who displeased him. Given Uday's notorious history of cruelty, this might mark the first real use of the Iron Maiden for its intended purpose, breaking its long-standing track record as merely a myth. Not a record to be proud of, if you ask me. Number 4. Phu Quoc Prison. Located about 20 miles off the coast of Vietnam, Phu Quoc Island may seem like a tropical paradise with its white sandy beaches and lush greenery. However, beneath its beauty lies a dark history, as it was once home to one of the world's most infamous prisons. Known as the Coconut Tree Prison, Phu Quoc gained notoriety during the Vietnam War. Originally built in 1949 by French colonialists to imprison Vietnamese patriots and rebels, Phu Quoc Prison could hold up to 40,000 prisoners in overcrowded and appalling conditions. Prisoners were housed in 12 areas of ramshackle huts, guarded by police battalions. Later, during the 1960s, the prison came under U.S. control, but the suffering of its inmates persisted regardless of who was in charge. Prisoners faced severe overcrowding, lack of food, poor sanitation, harsh physical punishments, and little to no medical care, leading to widespread disease. After the Vietnam War ended, Phu Quoc Prison was officially closed in 1975, bringing almost 3 decades of suffering to an end. Today, the prison grounds are preserved as a war memorial and museum, serving as a reminder of the horrors endured by prisoners of war. Visitors can see chilling reenactments of life at the prison, including one of the most notorious punishments, the tiger cage. This barbed wire enclosure was so small that prisoners couldn't fully sit up or lie down, forcing them into painful, contorted positions to avoid the sharp wires. Now attracting over 10,000 visitors each year, including former inmates, the Phu Quoc Prison Museum reminds us that the darkest chapters of human history are not so far behind us. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this type of content, consider hitting the bell icon down below. See you next time in Curiosity Unleashed.